Welcome back, everybody. My name is Tim, and this is another Real Ideal gear review. Today we're looking at the Citizen ProMaster Aqualand. This is what I would refer to as a MountainMan watch. There is another one coming up that'll be MountainMan watch number 2, but this definitely fits that category of hitting all the check boxes when it comes down to a watch that I would wear in the mountains here in western Montana, with one exception. We'll get into that later. So sit back and enjoy this review. All right, the Citizen ProMaster Aqualand is a big, beefy watch. I call it a MountainMan watch because it's probably as big as a mountain. It's one of the biggest watches that I own, height-wise, weight-wise, width-wise, length-wise. All of those measurements together make this a large watch. So let's go through the 5 things that we typically go through, which are size, fitment, finish, accuracy, legibility, and lume. Starting off with size, this watch is about 15 millimeters tall, which makes this a tall off-the-wrist watch. It is also a long watch. From lug to lug, it has a dimension that's, for me anyway, close to the maximum I would wear off of any watch this size. Also, the width of the watch, going from one side to the other, it's a wide watch. Now, fortunately, Citizen, when they designed this, kept the 3 o'clock, the typical, time setting crown that's usually at the 3 o'clock position, moved down to the 4 o'clock position, and then moved these adjustment and settings and sensor over to the left-hand side of the watch. So that makes this watch much more user-friendly on the wrist. It doesn't feel quite as wide, even though this is a very wide watch across here. Had this crown been in the 3 o'clock position, I don't think I would have been able to tolerate the overall width of this watch, but being down here, it helps. Plus, my hand is over on the right-hand side here, so therefore these 3 crowns just don't play a huge role in any kind of discomfort. So the size, this is a massive watch. It's a heavy-duty watch. It is one of the heaviest watches that I own. I don't know the exact weight of it, but relatively speaking, this is on the heavy side of any dive watch that's out there. Because it has a lot of features to it, and it also has a lot of stainless steel, it has 200 meters of water resistance, and all of those things combined make for a heavy watch. Fitment, this is a very, very easy watch to wear. The bracelet is great. It has it's a very comfortable bracelet. It's nothing special, but it is definitely a comfortable bracelet. As far as the adjustment pins on here, it just takes a little getting used to, but you can find the right adjustment on this watch. Also, this watch has an adjustable clasp, and so as you wear this, it has the push button deployment clasp. It has the milled material here, but it also has the ability to adjust in and out. It's a little hard getting it out, but there we go. It does all that. So if you get it somewhat close on here, I usually have it 2 notches out, and right there is about as snug as I can tolerate it. I could go 1 more out, and I think it's just too loose for the size, the mass, and all that of the watch. So that is the adjustment for the watch. It does a great job, and I think it's an easy watch to wear for that reason. And again, the placement of the crowns is key to this watch. The finish, this is a definitely stainless steel, brushed all the way around. So you're going to see some scratches, but you're not going to see as many scratches, so keep that in mind. Coin edge bezel on the edge of the bezel here, but also there is polish on the sensor. When you look at the sensor over here, this is high polished, and the very edge of the bezel has a high polish finish to it. So there is just a little bit of glimmer to this watch as you're wearing it. So keep that in mind as well. Not a big issue. As far as scratches go, yeah, it may end up getting some scratches on the bezel because it's such a tall watch. So the finish, I really like the finish on this one. It's easy to read. You also have a signed crown, screw down crowns as well. And all the crowns have the right amount of texture to them for grasping them and turning them. So one thing to remember that with any screw down crowns, especially on your chronograph, there's one, make sure that they are screwed down and tight for water resistance, to maintain your water resistance. So keep that in mind as you're using your watch. Again, easy grasp on the crowns, easy grasp on the bezel. The finishing overall, I like it. Being a dive watch and being a watch that I would wear for work, wear hiking, this is a watch that definitely is going to get a lot of use, maybe a little bit of abuse in it, but I really don't have a concern over how and where I wear this watch, with one exception, and it might be welding. Partly because it has a mineral crystal, and the mineral crystal is a ding on this for sure. So of all the finished products out there at this price point, I don't understand why this doesn't have a sapphire crystal. It should have a sapphire crystal, but it doesn't. So therefore, you know, there's a major ding right there on this watch, especially for the height. When you're looking at a watch that is this tall, not having a mineral crystal is a problem. As far as accuracy goes, Eco Drive, quartz movement, it's a grab and go. The battery stays charged in any kind of light. Keep it out in the light as much as you can, and it'll always stay fully charged. You'll notice there's a charge meter over here at the 9 o'clock position. I've never gotten that needle all the way to the very top, so I'm assuming that that is the top position for a fully charged watch. It may go a little bit higher than that, but I also got it used, so the battery may not be able to be fully charged. I don't know. But it lasts a long time. As long as you keep it out in the light, there's no issue. Put it on, it's going to last for, you know, days on end when it comes down to the overall accuracy and longevity of the battery. This is also because it's quartz. You know, you can wear this in all kinds of conditions when it comes down to impact, vibration, those kind of things. Like, this watch will take a beating. This piece, I didn't mention this is the water sensor. So when this gets wet consistently, then this indicator over here at the 9 o'clock position where it says ready will actually, the arrow will go to ready, and it's ready to start reading water depth. So that's a feature that sets you up for those of you that are divers, gets you ready for that. This is a great, from what I understand, because I'm not a diver, but this is a great backup to your dive computer, dive watch that you wear when you're diving. So legibility and lume. Legibility is outstanding. I have that slate gray dial. You have the white indices. You have the hour of 12, 6, and 9 are different from the other hour markers. The 12 o'clock is different from the 6 and the 9, so the orientation of the watch is easy to have in the middle of the night if it's low lume. It's different from all the other hour markers, which I really like that. It's easy to read. The date window is big. It's also got a little bit of chrome or shininess around the outside edge of it, just to kind of give it a little bit of sparkle like the other indices do. It takes up the entire third 3 o'clock indice, which I think is critical, because those that try to squeeze in a date window and have a little third or 3 o'clock window, 3 o'clock indice, it just doesn't work. So just give up the total space, make a bigger date window, and be done with it. And I think it works out really, really well. The other two hands that you see here have to do with the dive, max depth, current depth. All of that is part of the dive process. As you're coming back to the surface, you can, you know, pace yourself as far as how long you're at different zones, different layers of your return to the surface. So that's all part of the package, which I'm not going to get into that right now because I don't fully understand it yet. But at the same time, I know that that's what the features are for, so that your body can adjust as you move up through the water column. Lume. Outstanding lume. I'll show you some lume shots here. Low light, it's impressive how much this absorbs sunlight as you go from outside to inside where it's a little bit darker. You can actually see the lume light up on the watch for a brief period of time. Even in a well-lit room, it'll have this kind of blue glow to it. So nighttime, it's awesome. You have a pip on the bezel that gives you, again, the idea of where you're at. If you set this, you could set this, say at 7 o'clock or 35 minutes, whatever. You'll know exactly where that's set. The numbers on the dial or on the bezel don't illuminate, so not to worry. You really just need to know where that 12 o'clock or that pip is on the bezel. So lume is great. Water resistance is 200 meters, so no worries with water. Obviously, this is a dive watch with a lot of features ready for dive, so no issues when it comes down to using this watch for diving. Now, why do I designate this a MountainMan watch? Well, here's the list. First of all, water resistance. When you're dealing with the mountains, you're dealing with mountain lakes, you're dealing with the weather, rain, snow, so moisture is a concern, and making sure that moisture is never a concern. 200 meters is almost a guarantee that your watch will never have an issue with water. Again, so long as these crowns are screwed in, I think you're totally set for a waterproof watch for those kinds of conditions. Now, we don't do a lot of snorkeling or scuba diving in the mountains of western Montana. We can. There are some lakes that you can absolutely do that. But this one, as far as just the mountain work, definitely set up for moisture and keeping moisture out of the case. Analog dial, when it comes to using this watch as a survival tool, you know, if you know where the sun is, if you can see the sun reasonably, and you have an analog watch, you can do your makeshift compass and find out where south is. If you find out where south is, you find out where north is. So this is actually, when it comes down to using this for directional tool, I think it's an adequate tool for that. It's not perfect. This is not a precision tool. I wouldn't go out orienteering with just a watch, but you can definitely get by with this for a lot of the major things that you have to deal with. Adjustability. With all the conditions you deal with in the mountains, you have on this watch all the adjustability you can imagine. You have links that you can take out. You have an adjustable clasp that you can move, and it is a lot of space that you could put this over a shirt, under a shirt, if you needed to, just for visibility purposes, of depending on where you're at and what you're doing. So adjustability is huge. The big crown, the dial that makes everything more legible on here. So the fact that you have a wide across the top is really helpful for just reading the time, especially quick glance, low light, and just the simplicity of the dial. So I think that is a huge piece. Also, again, the way that they place these crowns on a watch of this size, of magnitude, mass, all that, you know, moving this crown down to the 4 o'clock position so your wrist, you know, this watch doesn't bump into your wrist as much or the back of your hand as much. And having these on the left side is also very helpful. I actually find this throws me off when I grab the watch, because I'm so used to chronographs that have these 3 pushers. This is not a pusher, it's a sensor, but have these 3 protruding things on the opposite side. So I'm grabbing the watch, looking at it like this, thinking that it's a chronograph, okay, and it's totally upside down. So anyway, that's something I have to get used to, but it's nice that they have all of those things set up the way that they do. The lume is huge. Having lume that, you know, you can have it low light at nighttime and not have to worry about recharging it necessarily is fantastic. You got something that you can read all the way through the night, easily into the early morning hours, just to know what the time is. You have big hands, big indices, lots of lume on both of those. The second hand is also illuminated, so that's great as well. So no issues there. Eco drive, you know, solar powered, and quartz. Low maintenance, low issue with this watch when it comes to just setting the time, winding it, being careful not to bang it around super hard. Quartz movements can take a huge beating, and I think that's something to keep in mind as far as a MountainMan type watch or a mountain oriented watch, is just the amount of abuse that this watch is going to take. It's got a lot of steel to it. It's got a lot of, I think, heft to it so that it can take a beating. And again, you can keep this close to the wrist with that clasp. So this is something that I think you really have to consider as far as a mountain type watch. It is bulky though, so it's not going to fit underneath a lot of clothing very easily. It's going to add to the overall height of things on your wrist, in addition to whatever you're wearing over it. So if you're wearing, you know, in the wintertime or fall or spring, it's going to add to the overall height of whatever it is that you're wearing. So what's the ding to this watch? It's the mineral crystal. It would be a 10 out of 10, easy if this had a sapphire crystal, but it has a mineral crystal. So it gets a 9.7 out of 10. Everything else is awesome on this watch. I love the color. I love the aesthetic of it. I do like to wear this watch at times. It kind of gets old wearing a big heavy watch all the time. I go lightweight too, but you know, overall this is a great looking watch, highly functional. Even when I'm taking a shower, this water sensor will trip. You'll see the ready needle go into the ready position. And it's just cool to see that work. And I'm going to take this out to the lake and do some very shallow snorkeling with it, and just, you know, test it all out and see how it works, see how deep I can go free diving. So anyway, 9.7 out of 10. Highly recommend this watch. The overall MSRP on this watch is it's way too high. Buy this one used. Go find a used one on the market somewhere and get this one used, and I think you'll be very satisfied with it. On the used market. It's a quartz movement, so you don't have to really be highly concerned about whether or not the movement itself has been maintained, you know, maintenance wise and things like that. It's a quartz movement. The real big thing is the battery and making sure that the battery is legit. You know, if it's, you know, several years old, you know, it may be a question mark, but for me it's not, because these batteries they'll last a decade or more. So 9.7 out of 10, and highly recommend purchasing this watch, especially used. So there you have it. That's the review for the Citizen ProMaster Aqualand, 9.7 out of 10. If it had a mineral crystal, it would easily be a 10 out of 10. And one of my favorite watches to wear in hiking, in the mountains, water, land, I mean, all of it together, it would be a great watch. But mineral crystal included, it's a 9.7. So there you go. That's the review for the Citizen ProMaster Aqualand. My name is Tim. This has been another Real Ideal Gear review, and we'll see you next time.